We are going to get started with powering the new creative class. I'm Lucia Moses. I'm a reporter at Business Insider. I cover media and entertainment, which is these days is often covering the creator economy. And I'm so happy to talk to Michael Jones with Wasserman and Lauren Inganamort with LTK. And so we're going to get into it. We're going to leave some time for Q&A, so think of some questions that we can, so I can turn it over to you guys toward the end. Why don't I just ask you each to just kind of frame what you do at Wasserman and LTK and where you fit into the creator economy.
Yeah, for sure.
And by the way, can you hear us?
Yeah,
that's what
I was checking too. I was like, can you actually hear us? Okay, cool. So I can give a high level on Wasserman first in case you're not familiar with it. We are a global sports and marketing and brand agency across sports, music, and entertainment. So we do talent representation on one side and brand and marketing on the other. You can kind of split the business down in the middle of there. On the talent representation side, which is where I sit, we are across both sports, music, and entertainment. I sit within our digital talent group, leading all digital talent representation inside of Wasserman. So what does that mean? That still sounds very vague. That is content creators, producers, digital entertainers, writers, anyone that falls with a digital native focus falls within our groups. And oftentimes we are their agent, representing them as individuals in all of their commercial and monetization opportunities. So helping them find ways to be able to monetize their platforms, make money through brand partnerships, licensing deals, speaking engagements, any way that they can go into the market and grow a brand. So a little bit about Wasserman and where I sit within the organization.
Amazing. Lauren Inganamort. So I head up our strategic partnerships at LTK. If you're not familiar with LTK, it stands for Like to Know. We are a 14-year-old company founded by a creator, Amber Venz Box, and her husband, Baxter Box. They've been involved in the business since day one, and our mission has and always will be to make creators economically successful. So obviously the creator market space has changed drastically in the last, I'd say, year to 3 years. If you think about 14 years ago, creator wasn't very much a term. So in our mission of making creators economically successful, we do a lot of education on that creator side, making sure that they are paid fairly, there's transparency for them. And then what we do on the brand side that I head up is making those sponsored partnership deals with brands to creators. So really a full life cycle between creators and brands. In the past, probably 1 to 2 years, LTK has very much pivoted from a shopping platform to more of a social platform. And that's really where we see the future of not only creators, but also that intersection with brands.
Got it. So how many of what percentage of the creators on your platform are you actually orchestrating brand deals with?
So we're an invite-only platform. So we have currently 350,000 creators. The reason we're invite-only is just to have some sort of level of transparency, but also safety for those brands. So when a creator enters the platform, they're able to link to our 6,000 retailers, giving them access to, in the simplest of form, that commission on sale. If you, a user, clicks on that affiliate link, you buy that purchase, they then get the sale. LTK takes a small portion of that as well. So I would say it depends on how many creators are getting those sponsored deals. Obviously much more as we've given it a little bit more access to brands from a self-service network, but also a managed service perspective. But it's a high majority of creators on that platform. We're also rolling out some new products where creators can directly connect with brands. That's been a big feedback from our creator community is I want to speak to a brand and hear from them, as well as creator gifting. So really making that connection between that creator even more accessible than it has been before.
How you guys your companies have worked together before? Maybe give an example, Michael, of how your companies might come together for the benefit of a creator.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because our two companies are on both ends of the spectrum. So we are on the talent representation side. So a lot of times it is LTK coming to our talent to want to work with them in coalition with one of the brands that they may be representing. So oftentimes we're on the other end of the negotiation table. So this is one of the few times you'll see us on the stage together and not, fighting it. But in general, the way that, we find the LTK platforms and platforms of that nature really beneficial for us because it's another conduit straight to a brand. but it also isn't empowering it through a direct sale and ROI perspective, right? And so sometimes, when there's a more performance marketing focused initiative, it is really helpful for us to have a partner like LTK because they're really good at being able to show the ROI back to the brand and in tune deliver more dollars later, right? And so oftentimes more than not, LTK is coming and tapping one of our talent agents to work with one of our talent alongside one of their campaigns.
Yeah, I would just add to that. I think that what they bring is the talent that we might not have seen from the plethora of that is on there with those 350,000 creators. And then we bring that data to match it. So very much like Mike said on the other end of the spectrums, but we very much come together to meet a brand's goals and KPIs, but really understanding at the end of the day that I think Michael's role versus a little bit less on the brand side is the negotiation, the transparency, asking those questions for those creators that might not know that or have that representation with what they're doing.
Yeah. And Lauren, you said you're invite only. So what sort of qualities are you looking for in prospective creators before you invite them onto the platform?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think when I say invite only, it's really you can apply. It's not like you have to be like, we reach out to you. That's definitely changed. I think when we first started talking about creators and influencers, it was about follower count. How many people do you have following? It's definitely changed to more of a community base. How are you interacting with your audience? So looking at, metrics in terms of engagement rate, things like that of your connection with that community. What is that trust that you are building with your brand? And not necessarily like I have 140,000 followers, but 0 comments. No one likes my stuff. What is that connection with your community and how are you building that out? And a lot of the things that we do at LTK is helping them build that community and that trust with their audience.
You were going to say something.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really important and why that matters, and it goes to this larger perspective and where agencies like ourselves have to play a dual client role. And similarly with LTK, I would assume we are not only, representing the talent, but we have to deliver a really strong product to the brand. Most of our industry runs on the backs of brand dollars. And so if we are putting up talent that are not going to work in that campaign, it wins in the short term and loses in the long term. And the inverse of that is true for brands, right? So you can fill media dollars really easy by putting a lot of talent on a single campaign. But did that campaign actually deliver the outcome that the brand is looking for? Changes whether or not that is the first and only time they work with you, or if you're building a long-standing relationship with that brand. And so oftentimes I always joke with our sports business because, if an athlete is in the market, they have the NBA or the NFL to fall back on. That's their primary focus, right? And the brand dollars are above and beyond. For our talent, brand dollars is the underpin of everything that we do. And so as an agency, we have to almost sometimes represent our talent, but ensure that who we go to LTK with is a curated list that will actually deliver on what the expectations are to ensure LTK continues to have the credibility to come back to us and deliver on talent recommendations.
Yeah, I totally agree with that because I think then what we're doing is they're passing over that list. We're going to the brands and saying, and here's the people that we want to put on your campaign. They've given us that information. We're matching it with that data to reach those goals. So it's really a full cycle of how we kind of work together and making sure that's really cohesive between the two parties.
So the brands have been working with creators for quite a while now. But what are the sort of, what are the questions? Well, you're hearing from brands when it comes to working with creators. How is it fitting into their overall media plans now in a way that it wasn't maybe 5 years ago?
It'd be interesting to hear from your perspective on it. What I've really seen, and there's this really interesting statistic that just come out this year. I remember when we first started the agency, not Wasserman, but I sold my company to Wasserman. When I was in that position, I remember looking at the linear television budgets and seeing the gap between social and digital and linear. And I thought there was no chance in the world that would ever even. And I was just like, it's unbelievable how much money is being spent in that category. And today, I think this year will be the first year that social and digital actually outweigh linear, right? So you're thinking about a 6-year window when we're looking at that. And so the budgets have changed. The way that they're looking at it have changed. But now instead of it just being, hey, we're only focused on performance or we're only focused on awareness, it's in every perspective of objectives and it's coming from different areas within the business. And so a lot of times this is a thing we hear in our brand's business instead of being the social AOR, which used to be a really stable label as an agency to go and conquer in an RFP that you could go after, there's creative AORs. We're the creative AOR of Taco Bell or KFC at Wasserman. And so that just shows you where we're at.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think from an LTK perspective, an influencer, we kind of got bucketed many years ago in the affiliate space, that commission on sale. That's where we sat. I think we've definitely moved up the funnel. We do a Northwestern study with a bunch of CMOs, high level CMOs, every year. And what we've seen is creators, the number one place that they want to spend money moving into 2026, which is really powerful if you think about what that means. I come from the publishing world. We were talking about this before, and I think that the landscape has changed. If you think about where the next generation is consuming content, the Gen Zs of the world, 1 in 4 want to become influencers when they grow up. They trust influencers more than their families. If you think about for a second, that is 1, wild, but 2, also where they have grown up with a phone in their hands. They are not watching TV. They are not listening to radio. They trust these influencers like they are their own family, and what the influencers are selling them is trust. So I think when marketers think about that, we have to think about how influencers and different types of influencers can fit in your media model and really collapse that funnel. So we talk a lot about with our brands of like being in that lower sales conversion. That is a different type of influencer with a different type of content. There is usually a call to action. There is usually a promo or some sort of sale. And as you move up that funnel from more of an awareness storytelling perspective, maybe you don't link any products. Maybe it is really your trip to wherever you're wanting to go. And it's that peek behind that curtain. You're capturing that audience and making sure then you're driving them down the funnel. I think the biggest mistake I see with brands and creators is like this one pop. Like we want to spend a certain amount of money. We want to see a 10 times ROI and we're never going to try it again. And creators a lot like search. You can't turn it on. You can't turn it off. So it's really understanding your marketing mix and where creators cannot just fit into one bucket, but how are you efficiently driving those dollars across the funnel? And that's where I really see brands and creators making long-term partnerships and not just these one-off deals that then the creator never talks about the brand again.
Well, so there's an evolution, and you have brands that are really far ahead of the curve and doing having these ongoing relationships, devoting a very, really significant amounts of their budget to creators and working with them, throughout the year. And how unusual is that? And how much education are you still having to do when it comes to, matching brands and creators and managing their expectations?
Yeah, I can take that one. I think for us, it's a little bit from a category perspective. So obviously the fashion, the multi-brand retailers of the world are kind of the pioneers. I think that makes sense of who the creator is and who you followed. But it's really interesting that I think the emerging markets, we recently started working with like an Expedia. And a person on my team came to me and I'm like, how is this going to work? Because they're very deal focused. They want to drive that sales funnel. And it was really about the education of where you can take your next trip that you never thought of with an influencer. So back to kind of what we were just talking about with that funnel, we set really clear expectations with them up front that this is probably not going to drive a ton of revenue for the beginning, but that long-term effect that they'll have. And we looked at new customer acquisition. We looked at the EMV that it drove, where people were going. So then the next campaign, there was a huge focus for San Francisco, say, or something like that. How do we target creators in that market? So it's really that data that you're applying, I think, as you're looking to the next campaign and making sure that those insights are driving what you're doing. I think from a category perspective, I think it's an exciting time that we're not seeing anyone say no anymore. I've been at LTK for almost 4 years, and I think when we first started having conversations with brands, it was like, I don't know, what is a creator? What is an influencer? And now those some brands are coming back and seeing what the other brands have done, and they're like, we want to be that. We want to know what they're doing, and those playbooks are really built for them, which is really exciting.
We're in a world of relevancy, and you have to be able to be driving relevancy to key audiences. And today, the best medium to do that through is oftentimes creator or talent-led initiatives. When you're in a world where advertising drives nearly every component of content today, you have to understand that it leaves, and we're not only there, but we're also commoditized in terms of the rates that you're seeing, right? If you're advertising across YouTube or linear networks, the advertising rates are starting to become standardized. And so if the differentiation is not in rate, And the differentiation is in the relevancy of that content and the audience that it's reaching. It allows people to stop focusing on necessarily solely the distribution and saying, what is a relevant environment that our brand should be showing up in? What is a really contextually strong piece of creative that we can make this with? And are we going to reach the core demographic and audience that we want to reach? And they're focused on those three areas. Unless if not, we should be doing creator. That's kind of become the norm. And now it's the next step down, and figuring out how are we going to work with creator and how are we going to implement that within our larger strategy.
I totally agree with that. Yeah.
So Michael, when you have get a new creator as a new client, what is the sort of what is the kind of education you have to do with them when it comes to introducing them to the world of working with brands? How sophisticated are they these days when they come to you, and how much education do you have to do?
We're really fortunate just by the nature of where we sit. We are one of the larger, global talent agencies in the world. So as you can imagine, we represent the top 1% of the creators inside the creator economy. You'll hear statistics of there's millions of creators and very much so true. And a lot of them are making a strong living per year. But within our walls and our roster, we have a threshold. So most of our creators are earning at least mid six figures or above annually. So they're a little bit farther into the normal journey. That doesn't mean that we don't sign development talent that are on their way up. And in those instances, this is funny because I want to keep it contextual to a brand environment. One of the conversations we almost have with every developing talent is the importance to land brand deliverables and timelines and do it in a really efficient manner, because they need to realize that ultimately they are being hired to do a service for those brands. And I promise you, if you put talent A and talent B next to each other and they're pretty close, but one of them will deliver on time, deliver with a quality product, bring revisions back, and be seamlessly to work with, they will come back to talent A way more often than to deal with talent B, even if talent B is slightly more premium, because they have to push media dollars out the door. And sometimes the one downside about the creator economy versus linear is when it's a $50 million media budget, you don't have time to sit there and spend it in a nuanced way every single time. You got to move dollars through the door. It's a very first world problem to have, but it's the reality of you got to move dollars through doors sometimes. And if it's very difficult sometimes historically in the creator economy to deploy that level of media budget, but those media budgets exist. And so as a creator, what we tell them is do not be the reason that it's difficult to go through creator, because they'll come back a lot more if you're easy to work with.
Thank you for saying that. I love that. Yes and yes. I think what we do then is to say to the brands, and I say this a lot to brands, is creators are people. They have lives. Things happen to them. They are not an ad unit. But I think at the same time, a lot of what we do is that education with brands, that if you were going to expect, say, a 2-week turnaround time for a custom video or a production that goes into those things, it also has to fit into their life and their content calendar. I think we all could agree that you have been on some sort of social platform and seen a creator video and been like, they're going about their daily life, and then there's their sponsor content, and then they keep going. And it's such a cringe-worthy moment for, I think, both sides. So it's really where we try to educate the brand of understanding that, like, we call it a content calendar. We're coming up on the Super Bowl for creator and just advertising in general, of you have to lock in those creators that you want to work with early, because that is when it does well, when it's authentic to them, when it's authentic to their audience. At the end of the day, that's who they're selling to, that community, that audience that they have built, and they have that with that trust. So they also lose trust within their audience when they have those moments that we all know and you skip through because you know that it's there. So it's really just bringing it back on both sides and that education piece.
I mean, the stories I remember, like, hearing about and writing about a few years ago, where we're always, one of the brand just, not really understanding that the creator, as you said, is a brand unto themselves, and they don't want to just be selling. And the creator needs to understand that, the brand is giving them money to act, to talk about positively about their product. It sounds like we haven't totally moved past those issues.
I don't think we've moved past it entirely, but I think we're a lot farther along. I think both sides have a better understanding of how to work with each other, and I think brands are becoming more sophisticated in fitting into those moments, and we are getting much more customized requests. and requests that you can tell that they're coming to them for the specific reason for that creator stands out in this way. And they want to work with them through that lens because they've started to see the data that LTK and others can provide them that shows them even if they just can move a little bit, looser on that brief and loosen the language just slightly, the performance is a lot stronger, right? And there's always going to be a middle ground to that. But we're seeing it move a lot farther than where it was a few years ago.
Yeah, definitely. I think for the brand side, they're also understanding this world way more. I think those rigid briefs that they used to have, is there. I think when I think about beauty, that's still a really tough category, or beauty brands that have to go through that fashion house with the approvals of what that looks like. And I think it's also just creators want to be compensated for the work that they are doing. I don't think I probably even understand the extent that goes through when creators create the content that they do, the work that goes into that, them hiring a team, the production elements of those things, and they need to be compensated fairly. We get asked a lot like, oh, there's a flat fee plus the commission that they sell. And it's like, yes, they're doing the work. They have done not only the production side of that, but also they're driving those sales to you all, and they need to be compensated fairly. And I think that's really changed in the past few years, which is exciting for the creator side.
Well, people often forget that if you think about it, and I'm going to show the contrasting world, when we used to run a linear television 30-second commercial spot, there was a creative agency involved. There was a writer. There was production. There was agency producers. There was a set. There was all these cameras. There's all of that went into creating that 30-second commercial, right? And now that is down to a single individual. Now they are often, still hiring teams around them, but it's a much smaller team, right? And so I always tell people that we've now packaged media and production together under one, and you need to remember that it's not as simple as it looks, right? It's not as simple as pick the phone up and create a TikTok. They have to fit it into their calendar. They have to make sure it actually fits within the storylines that they're telling and is contextually relevant. On top of that, they have to write it. They have to shoot it. They have to edit it. They have to go and actually produce it. Like, it is definitely more steps than just shoot, send. And on top of that, it gives them an asset they can use in media, which is a really unlock for a lot of brands.
Definitely. Yeah. No, I would just add to that too. It's also where I really saw that explode was during COVID, that you could no longer do those shoots when usually at those shoots, a brand was sitting there. They were watching on the screen. Let's rewind. Let's redo this. And now you're giving the keys over to a creator who's in their house. So it's really changed the world, but also from an efficiency model, the cost of what that was versus the cost of a creator. It kind of still blows my mind when they ask those costs of things. And I'm like, aren't you spending that much on a commercial and an ad? But I think that's just where we're evolved, and there's still that education piece there.
I was going to say, so there's still an expectation that the cost is going to be much lower.
Yeah, I think it is lower at the end of the day, but I think at the same time, there's a reason, and you probably speak to that as the reason why a certain influencer is her certain spend or his certain spend. There's been around their audience level, the engagement rate. There's reasons to back those things up. And I think the brand, if they want a certain creator and a certain feel and a certain look, they should be compensated for their work.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, there's always a conversation of how do you deliver on the rates? How do you guys get to a rate value? And I would say, if you look at it, there are standardized somewhat CPMs and rates within the market across media spend. Well, you take that, and then you have to take in context, as I said, a lot of this delivers on relevancy. So the multiple of how much higher they are above a standard CPM has to do with how relevant and how much intensity they have control over the audience that they are below, right? And if they have a lot of relevancy to a very niche audience that understands and will move, that rate is going to go up, because it's a premium offering that you can deliver on. And that's no different than any other pricing strategy. If you look at linear television, you look at their daytime 1:00 show, and then you look at the Oscars, you're going to see a difference in the CPM that is being charged for that 30-second spot. That is the same difference from a creator that's just delivering great product and it has the relevancy and the high level premium factor that they may have with their audience.
I'm curious because you guys have such a great lens on what brands are doing with creators, what they're asking for. What are you seeing them ask for now that they weren't, say, a year or two ago? where do you see it heading? What would be like the next evolution of how brands are going to be working with creators?
I think they want to be, it's interesting. For early days, there was this interesting relationship where they both felt like they needed each other, but at times didn't like each other. And today they want to work together much deeper and in more sophisticated ways. We're getting asked from our talent to say, I don't want to just do paid media work for this brand. I want to build an activation in real life with them. I want to go and build and do an executively produced show with them. I want to create formats. We talked about off stage before we came on, franchises. They're much more interested in the idea of IP and understanding how do we look at the new era of IP. I think some of that is, and we're all going to laugh at this because it's reality, everything that's come out of Hollywood recently is some pre-existing IP, right? If they make another Avengers movie, it will blow my mind. But that's because it's so expensive to create new IP, and it's risky. You don't know how it's going to land. Today, it's a lot more cost effective to create IP on YouTube or on these social platforms than ever before, and you can try new IP constantly. And ultimately, they want to work with brands on that IP and co-own the IP together. And so I think over the next 5 years, we're going to see a really interesting way where brands get into the co-ownership of IP along talent. And I think the LTKs of the world are going to be in the center of that as a social-first platform, helping empower the actual e-commerce and shopping capabilities behind the entertainment value that's coming from these.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's also just kind of wrap that as the efficiencies that you're driving in the brand. So you can create one custom content with one influencer and put that on a CTV, use it on your website, cut that down. The cost savings on that is insane. And now this creator that you have locked in with their audience is driving what we kind of talked before, beyond the funnel that you need. And then you're there, your brand ambassador, going to your event and doing things organically that you're not paying them for. A lot of times when we see brands really lock in with creators, it's what we call a halo effect. Creators are more likely to also link to that brand because they are investing in creators. So it's just this ripple effect that we see, is that creators want the flashy investments. I mean, who doesn't? So if I know that brand A is investing in creators in this full funnel capacity in different ways, I'm also now going to link to that creator so I get on their radar and be that next one. And it's just this evolution that I think we've seen, that, again, brands that are doing it well are using those media assets in a way that they've never had before.
Any examples you can share of specific brands that you think are good examples doing it well?
I think a recent one for us is Nordstrom. I think they're obviously a long-standing retailer. We've worked with them forever on the LTK platform. They came to us at the beginning of the year wanting to flip the funnel. You know, those calls, we were like, okay, everything we built.
What does that mean, flip the funnel?
So basically they wanted to just create more awareness. They've been forever how many old. They need to hit a new audience. What does that mean? So we really took a more brand awareness comedy approach with their anniversary sale, reaching new audiences that, you know, kind of give this comic relief of what the anniversary sale is and what's this one, you know, once a year thing and how do you dive into this. And it performed absolutely insane. They couldn't have been more thrilled with the results. And I think that was just more how we came together as a team, knowing that like we were always bottom of the funnel. It was always a ROAS conversation, but how do we look to those creators and give them that opportunity to really poke fun of Nordstrom a little bit? And in the end, it turned out really, really well.
So they were willing to laugh at themselves a little bit.
100%, which is so interesting because I don't find Nordstrom really that brand and their ecosystem. But I think that they knew they had to have a fresh approach to that. And I think it's one of those things that we've seen brands, you know, a lot of brands look to other brands of that copycat moment. And we said to the Nordstrom's team, I can't tell you how many people have said, I want to do what Nordstrom's doing. And that's when you know you've done it right.
Any examples come to mind for you, Michael, of creator brand partnerships that have worked really well and why?
You know, I think, we look at, again, sectors of the business that are performing. And I will say, I'm going to, look at the beauty industry, which was a leader in the creator economy. One of the first to really enter the beauty industry, came in early. And you even see them still investing and being a little bit more innovative today. One of our talent, Abby Baffo, who's a New York-based content creator.
I love her. She was who I was going to say is an up-and-comer that I'm obsessed with.
She's awesome. We love working with her. We've had her for a few years now. But you look at some of her large partnerships with L'Oreal, and they're not just in content only. She's doing live activations with them. We're building beauty sets where she's going in and teaching how she does her hair a certain way. She's partnering with L'Oreal on and off the platform. She's building e-commerce directly with L'Oreal. You're finding ways where she's all the way top funnel and very high end awareness. They're taking assets from that and they're running it all the way to billboard, right? And you would say, wow, it's really interesting to see a creator's content on a billboard. But as you said, they're finding ways to drive efficiency because they're taking a singular asset, be able to pull that through in so many different parts of their ecosystem, but it also creates a really connected environment. And the next conversation is how do we build alongside them? How do we create something with them and be in the co-creation process with them? So, there's just really interesting ways that brands can work with content and creators in more ways than just on platform through the standard Instagram reel or TikTok. And I think brands are starting to unlock that and understanding like we can get sophisticated with our approach.
I mean, obviously we're talking a lot about beauty and fashion, but are there any ad categories that you have eluded creators so far and that you're seeing finally come around? Are there any left?
Not to pick on anyone in the audience, I would say pharmaceutical is a tough one.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Anything in those areas are really tough and
very regulated categories.
Very regulated categories. It's still very challenging, right? And I understand why. And so you look at those categories and you do have a sense of that. I would say what's interesting to me most recently, we're in like an expert world for a moment where, I know this is a flashy word. We almost got through the whole time without saying it, but AI, there's experts on LinkedIn and platforms like that where, brands are looking for experts, doctors, therapists and others and an expert category. And we've started to sign experts in categories who don't even have massive reach, but they have relevancy to that audience that we spoke about. And because of the use of paid media dollars today, brands are comfortable saying we don't need the organic reach to be that significant. If the content's really strong, they're known in their audience, we will use paid dollars to reach that audience. And so I would say that's something that we're seeing a lot of right now.
So are they using, in that case, that influencer, that expert influencer, where in the past they might have gone to like a B2B publication in that category?
Yep. Yeah. I think exactly. You're seeing B2B enter the market and for a very long time, B2B was not using the creator economy. And now B2B is very much so in it. I just saw a creator do a deal, with Salesforce that would not have historically existed 2 years ago to see somebody speaking through the creator lens about a tool that most of the creators probably are not utilizing, right? But that individual is an executive in marketing where Salesforce is really, really relevant for our audiences.
I think just to add to that, I think it just goes back to the trust factor. Creators are selling trust. It's that authentic relationship that they built with their audience. They understand what they're using, if that's a service, a product, whatever that may be at that point, and creators, the connection between them.
I just want to pause for a minute to see if there are any questions in the audience. Yeah.
Hey, Michael and Warren, thank you and Lucia for coming and having a conversation today. I'm an entertainment journalist and I've more than 13 years of film and television, and I've noticed a shift in the press line from when films up when airing. About a decade ago, just see a lot of digital media and these talks to be as success done. And then now, more of people, influx of creators, influencers, and other people that are getting onto the orbit. I'm curious to see if you are looking around in the realm of the different media outlets that are also covering it, people that do it on their own and own endeavors, or like how that works out between PR agencies and the people that are now on a press line. It's just learning the world of the journalism and marketing. Just wanted to bring that on the city.
Yeah, it's a great point, and that change has been immense. And the studios are tapping the creators and talent in that center to promote these movies more often than not. I think of just recently, The Long Walk that just came out. They tapped one of our talent, Dead Meat, to actually host screenings to premiere that film. And I watched it. If you haven't seen The Long Walk, be prepared when you watch it. But, yes, I think we're seeing that transition and journalism is shifting. I think one thing that our industry has to get right, speaking to you just transparently, is we need to remain the art of writing. And I tell our talent all the time that we represent when they go into a journalistic world, they need to do the work. They need to learn how to write. We lost editorial at times. And it's because of that, at times we've lost a little bit of journalism and we need to get that back. And so what my hope is for our industry is that we don't lose the art of writing. We still do really strong editorial. We teach these kids coming out of college how to do credible journalism and push them into that space where there's really a big outlet to push your work more than ever before, but to not lose our fundamentals.
Thanks, Michael. Anybody else? Yeah.
Hi everyone. So I'm actually a LinkedIn B2B content creator, and you mentioned earlier, Lauren, about how we might be more niche for breaking much smaller. I have about 3,000 followers, but they're all entrepreneurs, other people working on the social media, high creators like myself, and those I'm like, brands like yours, you get more partners, especially in the domain.
Well, first off, congrats. That's amazing. I think that's one of those things where like when you're little, when people asked you wanted to grow up, probably not that. I think it's just, again, that organic connection with those brands. So linking to them, making sure that you're in touch with them, liking their posts, going to their things. I think that's the biggest thing that we see. And I don't think it's a category of LinkedIn or a different platform, but making sure that you're in the know of what is happening. I think that's across all businesses. I say this to my team all the time. If you are not doing a quick Google search before you jump on a call with anybody and know what is happening, you're wrong. But I think for you, it's understanding what is in the know, what is coming up next, what is the pulse that you're essentially on will get you to that next level.
Anybody else have? Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for the insight. How do you start with policy, right? So what is the best way to say the lifestyle to
Yeah, I think it's kind of in the same vein of just being in the know of what's happening kind of in the industry, but also like following them on Instagram, commenting on their posts, DMing them. I don't think there's like any shame essentially in the world at this point. And then I think it's also just that deeper connection of following other content influencers and what are those trends that they're doing. Not saying you should jump on trends and do everything that everyone else is doing, but just making sure that like the ecosystem that you're in, that you're on that pulse of essentially what's happening.
We tell even our biggest talent who charge tens of thousands of dollars for a singular post that the best way to get a brand to want to work with them is to post them organically and show them value. Because if you can show them value and that you're a true fan of the brands, they're watching. There is somebody behind some desks that is pulling in every single tag that they are mentioned in, and they're looking at them. And so wherever you travel to, take a moment to just tag the brands that you're using naturally. If you get on American Airlines, talk about it. If you get to a Marriott hotel, talk about it, right? And don't be afraid of that, right? Because they are watching. You may not even realize it.
Great. And we've got one more question right here.
Hi, thank you all for your time today. My name is Stephanie Wolf, and I'm in public affairs actually at NYU. And I was wondering for LTK, like to know, you mentioned your Expedia collaboration that you guys are doing recently. I was wondering if you have considered partnering with musicians or people that review music and kind of go to concerts and things like that, because at the university we have people that are musicians come and do like we'll pick like one person and then they'll be accessible basically, and then they'll host things for students and kind of go through this whole thing. And I'm wondering if something like that would actually be very beneficial to you guys regarding music, because they're going to be touring anyway. And, you know, if they did something with Expedia and with you and kind of filmed a lot of different things, that would be something that would
Yeah, absolutely.
helpful.
I think we have a whole creator, I think they're called Creator Go-Get team, of going out and finding the niche creators. I think that creators is just taken down what that definition is. There is no more fashion. There is no more beauty creator. It's really all things essentially. And I think we want creators to be on our platform and linking. It's just this flywheel that we essentially have for all brands and all creators. So definitely, I think it's where is that next group going to be? I also think when I think about social media, and we were talking about Abby before, is like, she's like a single 28-year-old. We couldn't be further apart in our lifestyle, but you follow along with someone's journey and then you're invested in them. And I find sometimes social media, as much as it has some cons, you find your group, you find who you're following and your interests. And I think if you have those people that are following you and want that engagement, there's a reason for that. So definitely.
Did you want to add a final word, Michael?
No, I know we're at time. I'll just say thank you so much for coming out and just continuing to enjoy and listen to the great work that's happening inside the creator economy. As crazy it is, it's really just getting started. I always tell people we're just a decade into this. And so I can't imagine where we will be in a decade from now. And so let's just all enjoy the moment that we're in. And there's a long ways for us to go.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.